Alrighty, guys, Peacemaker Season 2 is only a couple weeks away, which is exciting. I think that, the DCU, I like Superman. I thought it was really solid, and I'm intrigued to see where the new DCU goes. I will say, I've said this before, the DCU in 2025 is really the James Gunn cinematic universe for all intents and purposes. Creature Commandos, which was at the end of 2025 into 2020, or at the end of 2024 into the beginning of 2025, that was written by James Gunn. And then Superman obviously was James Gunn's baby. And then Peacemaker Season 2 is even more so from his mind. So for all intents and purposes, it's really the James Gunn cinematic universe at this point, which for me personally has its ups and downs, right? I think for me, I've said this before, James Gunn has a ceiling when it comes to his movies and shows. I've said this, it's not just DC, it's not just, a bias against DC. I've said this about his Guardians of the Galaxy films as well. I really enjoy them. I really enjoy Peacemaker. I really enjoy the Suicide Squad. They all kind of have a ceiling for me, though, in terms of enjoyment. There's something there where his sensibilities as a director just quite can't get me over the top of, oh, wow, this is a generational kind of project for me. And I know a lot of people love the first Guardians, a lot of people love the third Guardians, a lot of people love Superman. So it's just me personally. But anyways, we have a new trailer for Peacemaker Season 2. And first of all, just want to address this out of the way because we did a segment a week ago where we talked about this. So there's a line in this trailer, right? And it's going to be a big plot point, apparently. And we'll talk about this towards the end of this trailer thoughts segment. But there's a line in the trailer where Peacemaker alludes to the fact that they're in a dimension that's better than theirs. And James Gunn clarified at Comic-Con what that actually meant because we talked about it without any context, right? We hadn't actually seen what was in the trailers itself. We were just talking about that line. And I speculated, is he talking about the DCEU? Is that what's going on here? So turns out that's likely not what's going on here, although it does open a whole can of worms because what he's actually talking about is the story of what looks like the entire season of Peacemaker Season 2 is that in that pocket universe or quantum folding tunnel or whatever it is that was in the first season where he got his costumes and whatnot, apparently creates a rift into another dimension where people love him. And that looks like that's the thematic element of this season is the fact that people love Peacemaker in another dimension and he really wants to turn a new leaf and become a hero. But, he obviously has very violent tendencies and his past is literally catching up to him in the fact that Rick Flag Sr. looks like he is the villain of Peacemaker Season 2. So that's all interesting and whatnot. And before we dive into dimensions and multiverse and things like that, I want to talk about some of the things in the trailer that I liked and then some other things in the trailer that concern me a little bit. I mean, it's Peacemaker. It's crazy, right? I thought the joke at the beginning was funny, very in line with Peacemaker, where Vigilante is throwing Economos a drink and he just keeps dropping it. Like that stuff it's classic Peacemaker, it's classic James Gunn, and it's funny. I really enjoy that kind of stuff. The action looks crazy as usual, and it looks like they have upped their game, right? It looks like they really have stepped it up, in terms of compared to the first season, which was not that it was a throwaway kind of show for HBO because James Gunn really elevated what was there, but I don't think that HBO fully understood why they were doing a Peacemaker show, but they, trusted James Gunn and DC was kind of on a tailspin, so they just let him do what he was going to do, and it turned out really well for everyone involved, I think. So that's all well and good. And I think that, again, it's the spirit of Peacemaker. I think that there will not be a high variance in terms of whether you liked, if you liked Peacemaker Season 1, you're probably going to like this season. And if you didn't like Peacemaker Season 1, probably not going to like this season. I just don't imagine that there's going to be a very high variance when it comes to that. So there's that. Again, and I liked Peacemaker Season 1, so I am looking forward to Peacemaker Season 2. That being said, this trailer, both as a trailer and what it shows me about what Peacemaker Season 2 is about, has me concerned. So, number one, as a trailer itself, I just think it's a kind of sloppy trailer. It's one of those trailers that wants to show you so many different things from so many different scenes, and it wants to show you a little bit of everything. And I personally am not a big fan of those kinds of trailers. I think the trailer should have its own little mini narrative story that's going on from beginning to end, instead of just trying to show you every single thing about every single plot point, right? Like, I for an example of this in the trailer is the little plot point that they keep trying to make of a Harcourt being in love with Peacemaker and Peacemaker being in love with Harcourt, the will they, won't they? And it's like, yeah, you could have teased that in one or two shots in the trailer, but it became a whole different thing they cut away to in the trailer. And there's the scene where Adebayo is talking to Harcourt and she's like, oh, is that can ever happen? And Harcourt's like, nope, not gonna happen. Like, I get that it's going to be a big sticking point, I guess, in this parallel dimension. But still, it's something where it's like, you didn't have to make that as explicit in the trailer, but they kept jumping to all these different little things within the show. So as a trailer, I thought the trailer itself was a little sloppy. I like the first teaser, where it was just Justice Gang in the beginning with a little scene, and then you kind of get a taste of what's going on there. And at the very end, you see that other Peacemaker, which we kind of speculate, is that a dream, and what's going on there. Here's the other thing, though. Multiverse. I'm a little torn on this because I think James Gunn probably had a good reason for doing what he's doing. At the same time, though, have we learned nothing? I think that with everything going on in the MCU, and look, I'm somebody who says Phase 4 is pretty good, and there are some good things about Phase 5, even though I think it's the weakest phase. The Multiverse saga, though, needs to end, right? We need to move on from the Multiverse saga. And even The Flash, and even when the DCEU was doing Multiverse, it was like, come on, guys. Like, we're in such a Multiverse phase, and I think we all got over it much quicker than the entertainment industry thought we were going to. And so, I get that James Gunn probably had a very good reason for doing this in Peacemaker, and I know it's not strictly multi-universe, and don't get on me in the comments about that. I know. It's an alternate dimension and whatever. It's the same thing. It's the same plot device, effectively. And I don't know if that's where we wanted to go in Peacemaker Season 2, also in the third project in the DCU. Are we really opening it up to alternate universes? I know in Superman, spoiler alert, minor spoiler alert, we saw pocket universes. But even still, this is opening up a whole can of worms, because we talked about in the last segment where we heard this line of different dimensions. Is that a reference to the DCEU? How are they going to transition over Peacemaker from the DCEU into the DCU? Is that going to be confusing? And I don't know. Is that going to make people think who are big Snyder fans that, oh, there's a possibility that the DCU can exist? And that is that going to fuel the fire of, even though James Gunn has continued to reiterate, and he did so again recently, that Robert Pattinson is not the DCU's Batman. He keeps saying this, guys. He keeps saying this. Is that going to continue to fuel the fire that Robert Pattinson's Batman is going to enter the DCU? I don't know. And frankly, I think we're all kind of over the multiverse, you know? I think that this concept has been played out multiple times. I'm sure that it'll be used effectively by James Gunn. He usually has a very good reason for doing these story devices. It's not just going to be haphazard, so I get that, and I have faith in that, but I'm still just a little trepidatious, you know? I don't know. Is this going to be... is it going to be something where it's like, oh yeah, we wanted to do multiverse, and when we filmed it, it was exciting and whatnot, but then kind of seeing where the DCU landed, it just doesn't look like it's as exciting anymore. I don't know. I'm hoping for the best. I think that of all the projects, Peacemaker is probably the one where James Gunn's sensibility works the best for me personally. Maybe aside from the Guardians films. So I know that he probably has a very good handle on what he's doing here. I just look at this trailer. I look at it as a trailer and also as a story of, or as glimpses into what the season is going to be. And I can't help but be a little bit concerned. But guys, maybe all of this is for nothing. We're going to find out in, I think, just a couple weeks here what is going on. So stay tuned for that. We're going to be doing full spoiler discussions on the Access Blockbusters pod and on the Access Blockbusters YouTube channel. So stay tuned for that, guys. What do you think about Peacemaker Season 2's trailer? Are you excited about it, or are you a little bit nervous like me? Let me know in the comments down below.